Hello, if you're new here, my name is Priscilla. I typically share on homemaking, healthy living. Right now I share a lot on pregnancy because I'm 10 weeks pregnant right now. But today I'm going to be sharing something a little different. It's something that I've gotten a lot of questions about, and I keep saying, like, let me make a full video on this because it needs a whole video for it. But today I'm going to be sharing about how I met my husband online, our kind of timeline of getting engaged and married, and then I'm also just going to be sharing some of my thoughts on online dating in general. So I will try to include timestamps, so if you just want to skip ahead to that, then you can. But first, I'm going to get started on how my husband and I met. One thing that was very helpful in this is my husband, he's very good at like logging things. So when we first started talking, up until like past marriage, he kept on his phone in the notes app like every day of every event and everything that happened. So like the day we met, he like said exactly what happened and what he did, and every visit where he came to Kentucky and met me, he like wrote it down in his notes app. So I have so many details to go back and kind of like skim through to share this with you. But let's just start from the beginning. So I did make a little timeline of my own to help me stay on track. First thing is March 6th, this is 2018. We met online. So for online dating, I was just at a point in my life where I was just sick of dating, and I just really wanted to be married, and I really wanted to be married to a godly man. I was also only 20 years old at this point. I just always knew I wanted to get married young. I always felt very called to being a wife and a mom. I always wanted to homeschool. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I just kind of felt like I was wasting my life doing things in like college and like all this stuff. It almost felt like my life was just on pause until I met the person I was gonna marry. Which I know some of that might not be like the right way to think of things, but that's just definitely how I felt. So I was like, maybe I should try getting online. It was still, I feel like, a lot more taboo then in 2018 than it is now. I feel like it kind of had the stigma, if there were people doing it for the right reasons, then they were very cringy people. And then the other side was people just doing it for like hookup culture and whatever. Yeah, it felt very taboo and weird doing it. And I remember I just joined like all the Christian dating apps I could. So I joined Christian Mingle, and then I think you had to pay for that one. I don't know. If you had to pay for it, I wasn't doing it. I wasn't investing money in this. I joined eHarmony, and then I quickly deleted it because I saw you had to pay for it. Some of these things, like, they don't tell you have to pay until after you join. So then I joined one called Crosspaths, and that was a very small Christian dating app. I joke that like you would swipe through 100 people and then you'd be through the app. And then within like, it was like only a couple weeks of kind of being on it. There was, even within those like, maybe it was a month. Even within that month, I was still very, just felt very weird about it. So I would occasionally just like delete it and be like, ugh, this feels weird. But yeah, I ended up staying on it. And then one day I got a message from my husband. I remember when I first saw his account, the thing that stood out the most to me was in his bio, he put that his favorite Bible verse was Ephesians 2, 8-9. And I felt like on my experience on dating apps, like swiping through profiles, I feel like a lot of men didn't even say anything about themselves, or if they did, it was something like, I love dogs, or I love whatever. Like, so I loved that he was very, like, it was very clear from the get-go that his faith mattered to him. I forget how it works, but I think he said that we matched, and then I saw his profile, and then he messaged me. And he told me that he almost didn't message me because he reached out to me on eHarmony and I never responded. So kind of crazy because, like I said earlier, I downloaded eHarmony, I like made a profile, and then I saw that you had to pay for it, so I deleted it. But my profile was still up, so he messaged me not knowing that I wasn't even on there anymore. And he could have very easily thought like, man, she ignored me on eHarmony, I'm not gonna message her on Crosspaths. And he said he did think that, but then he was like, no, I'm just gonna do it anyways. And like, praise the Lord, he did. Man, it's amazing how the smallest things can change your whole life. But yeah, I wish I remembered like the message he sent me. I think we have it like stored somewhere on like old phones or something. But I do remember one of the first things we connected on was on my dating profile. I shared about one of the greatest tragedies in our world is that people are eating their bananas unripened. So we bonded over that. That was just a funny little joke. We kind of like chatted for a couple days. He very quickly wanted to do a phone call. So we had like a 3-hour phone call on a Sunday. I remember that. And I remember feeling like really excited after the phone call because I was like, wow, we talked for so long. We have so much to talk about, whatever. And then I remember I was at like a church meeting or something at this point in Kentucky. And I remember he was texting me saying like, hey, when could I come visit you? It was like March, and I was thinking like, okay, well, I might have like a week in April or like a week in May. And then he was like, oh, like I was thinking like maybe this Thursday. And I was like, what? So I like talked to my parents about it. He actually ended up calling my dad and talking to my dad on the phone. My family typically wasn't super involved like that in like our dating experiences or lives. Like if I ever wanted to date someone, they wouldn't go to my dad. Like that wasn't the norm. I think my husband initiated that, but I also think it just made my whole family feel a lot more comfortable since it was like this grown man coming from another state. I just remember feeling kind of like uncomfortable about the whole thing just because it was like someone coming from another state that I met on the internet. Like that just felt kind of weird. But also the fact that he's like 5 years older than me, it felt like a grown man coming from another state. So I just remember feeling like a little, actually super nervous. We actually, oh my goodness, should I share it? My dad took a video of the first time me and my husband met. So basically, to like zoom forward, my husband talked to my dad on the phone, got my dad's permission to come visit me, and he was gonna stay at my parents' house. I, at the time, lived in an apartment 15 minutes from my parents, so he was gonna come stay at my parents' house. So then that Thursday, he arrived, and I was meeting a girl from our church, like in our youth group. So I was meeting her for coffee, and he got to my parents' house before I did. By the time I got to my parents' house, he had already been there for an hour. And I remember I walked in and they just seemed like they were best friends already. And I was just like, what is going on? But my dad actually filmed when I walked in and me meeting my husband for the first time. And it is so awkward. It is so uncomfortable to watch. But it's also cute since we're like, you know, married now for 8 years and whatever. So then that weekend, since I'm originally from Northern Kentucky, we're like right next to where the Creation Museum is and the Ark. So we went to see the Creation Museum together. I took him there. I took him to some of my favorite coffee shops, different like views around Cincinnati. Every time he visited, we pretty much just spent time with family. My family lives out in the country, so we just went on family walks. We like played volleyball together. My family does this thing called the hot seat. Anytime someone would be dating someone or like joining the family, we would put them on the hot seat and then all of us would go around and just ask them any question we wanted to, no matter like how uncomfortable or awkward. And you know, I don't know if I would recommend this, like recommend people doing this, but I will say when my husband did it, everyone was so impressed with him because of his honesty. Like he was super honest. There was times where I was like, maybe that's a little too honest. I don't think you needed to say that. Yeah, I think that just really impressed everyone, how honest he was. So even though the hot seat might not be the best idea, he definitely played it very well, and it definitely worked for him. So then after that weekend, we would just talk throughout the week, and then he started visiting every other weekend. So to put that in perspective, he's from Charlotte, where I am now, and then I was in Kentucky, and it was about around an 8-hour drive average, depending on how fast or slow you're going or if you hit traffic or whatever. He was driving that there and back, so like 16 hours every other weekend just to come see me. The next time he came was for Resurrection Sunday. I'll also try to share as many pictures as I can from all of this so you guys can see. I love looking back at old photos. He came for my birthday. We would once again just spend like lots of time with family, going on walks. We would listen to like Bodhi Bacham sermons a lot. I remember we watched Gone with the Wind together. We always really bonded over like working out and eating healthy. Even though I was vegan and he was the opposite of a vegan, we still bonded over like caring about eating healthy. So that was also something we had fun doing together, was just me making food for him to try, like acai bowls and different things like that. I remember I used to make this like cashew cheese dip with nutritional yeast when I was vegan. And then we'd also like go to the gym every day together and work out together. So the crazy thing is we really like expedited the whole process of like dating and engagement and marriage. So on his notes, it says we started marriage counseling in May and we weren't engaged until July. So that's kind of crazy to think about. So it says that May 19th was our first marriage counseling session. We had our marriage counseling done by my youth pastor and his wife from when I was in the youth group. And we would go visit them sometimes, and then they would come visit us some. I think it's been so long I kind of forget. So my first visit to Charlotte was end of May. I think Josh's whole family was in town, which if you didn't know, he has 7 siblings, and some of them live in Texas, some live in Florida, but the rest all live here. So I think, yeah, his whole family was in town, so I got to meet everyone. I remember we went to like Carowinds, which is like a theme park here. We went kayaking. I obviously like got to meet his family, and I stayed in his parents' house. I remember I went to visit his church. Oh, and then, yeah, my nephew Samuel, it was like his baby dedication, which is crazy because he's like, what, like 9 now? He's like 8. So yeah, that was a fun visit. It was good to like get to know his family, but it's also crazy that we were doing marriage counseling before I even met his family. Like we were definitely like, here's the thing, I'll share more about this later. June 1st, it says he got the ring. That was in his notes. So June 1st is when he got the ring. Remember, we met March 6th. So is that 3 months in? Got the ring. Then my husband, he had planned all of these trips with his siblings of like going to Africa and like, I forget where else, maybe like Italy, or I forget all the destinations. I remember Africa for sure. But he also planned them like not expecting to meet me. So then once he met me, he was like so sad that he planned all of them, because then it meant that a lot of them were long. So like we didn't see each other for a whole month because of trips that he planned. There's another time where we didn't see each other for a whole month. So basically like all of June, and then he came back from whatever trip that was, and he proposed that weekend. And then after that weekend, he went on another trip, and I didn't see him for like another maybe 3 or 4, or maybe no, 4 weeks. That was definitely sad for both of us. But okay, proposal weekend. So it was July 1st weekend. I remember that weekend we like went to coffee shops. We like took him to get like his hair cut at like this like nice barber in Cincinnati. I literally had no idea he was proposing that weekend, which everyone after they heard that, they're like, Priscilla, it's so obvious, like he had to propose this weekend. Like another thing I didn't even think about or write down, we had already booked the venue for our wedding before we were engaged. So that's kind of crazy to think about. So they were like, obviously he had to propose this weekend because he's gonna be gone for a month after this weekend. But I just never even thought that, which is obvious because if you see the picture where we got engaged, my hair was like dirty in a ponytail. I was like not expecting to get proposed to. So basically what happened was that weekend, my dad's side of the family, I forget why, but we were all getting together at my grandma's farm. And that was really special to me because my grandma's farm is where I spent like 60% of my childhood or more. And we hadn't been there in years. So it's just a very sentimental place for me. And we were all together, and he was like, hey, we should go on a walk. So we go on a walk, and we go like up to this pasture, and he proposes there. I don't remember all the details of what was said and everything. I just remember where we were standing, and I just remember being shocked. And then afterwards we came back down the hill, and he took a picture of me like with the ring. This is the ring if you guys want to see it. Da-da-da. So then after that, I actually don't remember all this that well, so I'm happy my husband wrote it down. We apparently like went back to Charlotte for a week, like drove to Charlotte together, and then spent the time there. I was there for July 4th. And then obviously I got to see his family again. So I only saw his family once before getting engaged. So I met them all for the second time, but met his family again. And then we drove back to Kentucky together. And then I think he went on another like month-long trip. So then after that trip around mid-August, my husband, not husband at the time, but my fiance at the time, drove to Kentucky, and then we got like a huge U-Haul and put all of my things in it, and then drove all of my stuff to North Carolina to move me a couple weeks before the wedding. We were just in an apartment at the time, so I lived in the apartment, moved all my stuff there, and then I think about a week before the wedding, my friend Haley, she came, and we just like explored Charlotte, North Carolina together, which was really fun because like we basically had a honeymoon baby. So I quickly dove into motherhood, and I actually haven't explored Charlotte much since that week with my friend Haley. So I'm really happy we got to do that. So then I was moved in August, and then we got married the weekend of September 2nd. So for that weekend, basically what we did is we rented this like giant cabin mansion in Gatlinburg, and all of my family stayed in the cabin, all of his family stayed in the cabin, and then a couple friends. And we basically just like spent the whole weekend together, which I feel like was the perfect thing to do for like two families who have never met. I've also barely met his family. He's met my family quite a bit. I feel like that's something like consistently throughout our marriage too that we love, is like just bringing together all the people we love. Like we both just love that. So yeah, I just feel like it was like the best thing. That weekend, there was one night where we like played the newlywed game, and me and him hosted and like figured out which couple knew each other the best. I think the next day we went like tubing down a river. It was also just, yeah, it's just fun, like all living together. So we all ate breakfast together and lunch together and dinner together. Oh, and then Saturday night we had a rehearsal dinner with like pizza, and it was just really fun. And then Sunday morning we got married on the balcony of the cabin, and it was so beautiful. I was very like, for me, I just never wanted to put that much money into a wedding. I just didn't understand the point of it. That's just who I am. This just sounded like exactly what I wanted. I remember when I talked about it, I was like, for me, what I want in a wedding is like for my family and his family to all get cabins together. We'll just play board games, and we'll just like hike up to where we get married and then get married there. So this was almost like kind of a compromise with like our families of like, even if that's what I want, I think the rest of the family still want to have like a wedding. So this was almost like a compromise that ended up just being perfect. We also did play games. So we played Mafia one night, and that was really fun. I love playing Mafia. It was just a great weekend. And then yeah, Sunday morning, we got married on the balcony. Soon after, we had an arm wrestling competition between my dad and his uncle. My dad won. I feel like I have to say that. So yeah, just a very unusual wedding way of meeting. If you think about it, we met March 6th online and March 16th in person, and then we were married September 2nd. So it was like, I think 5.5 months of knowing each other before we were married. Then after the wedding, we had food, packed up all of our things, drove back to Charlotte, and then spent the night in our apartment together. And then next morning flew out for our honeymoon. And for our honeymoon, we went to Cancun, and we've been wanting to go back to like the same resort so bad since we went, just because it was so nice. And I don't know, all you can eat food. I was also vegan at the time, and I just really want to like redeem my experience there and go there when I'm not vegan. We actually planned to do it 2 summers ago. We ended up just having to cancel last minute because we realized that our son Draper, we just realized we could not leave him. Like he was just not ready for that. And we also just like didn't want to put that on my parents of like him just, you know, he just would not do well with it. So we ended up canceling it last minute. We were very close to going though. So that's our whole story of meeting online, very quickly getting engaged, getting married. Now to share my thoughts on online dating and kind of on our experience. The first thing I have to say about online dating is, one, it obviously can be a really good thing. For me and my husband, like, praise the Lord. I just feel like it's like the biggest evidence of God's providence in my life that Josh and I are married. Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing that we were like brought together the way we were. Also in my husband's family, he's one of 8 children, and out of all 8, 5 out of 8 have met their spouses online. Only 1 has met their spouse in person, and then 2 of them are still single. I'll see if I can link their Instagram handles down below. But yeah, so it's obviously like worked out really well for a lot of people that are close to me. So I definitely think online dating can be a good thing. For some cautions that I can have with it, 1, I feel like if you're not careful, it can distort your expectations. So on one side of this, I would say I feel like the tendency for men would be, after just like swiping through women constantly, kind of just seeing them as objects, and then just thinking like, I want the shiniest one. And even just like raising your standards of like, I'm swiping through all these women that I think are just the shiniest objects, so now I need the shiniest object. So yeah, I feel like it can like distort men's expectations when it comes to like the standards they have in regarding to like looks. But then on the flip side of that, I feel like it can do the same thing for women. I feel like not so much with looks maybe, but more so with just like unnecessary things. So I feel like women can more so be like, he doesn't like coffee, can't date him, or he must like dogs, or he must like country music, things like that are just not important things. And yeah, I feel like when you're like swiping through so many people on the internet and the world just seems like there's so many possibilities, then it can make you become even pickier to where you're not dating someone because they don't have the like most minuscule attribute. That's just something I would be aware of, is just not letting it distort your expectations. And if you are someone who's going in with the intention of marriage, then making sure it doesn't sway that, because I feel like I've also seen women who get on dating apps and they're like, man, I'm getting a ton of attention. This is fun. And then they just like maybe just enjoy the attention and just keep going. I would just be, yeah, very intentional and very aware of yourself and your expectations, and making sure that all of your expectations are God honoring and like actually important. And that's actually like also kind of a pro of online dating, is I feel like for me, it made me very quick to be like, okay, let's talk values. Like, let's talk the important things. Like, I don't want to waste my time. I do not like dating. And I feel like that's one thing that really worked for me and my husband is I mean, I don't know if I should say never, but we basically have never argued or disagreed about anything that's like a major value. So anything like homeschooling, or whether I would stay at home or go to work, or whether we would go to church every Sunday, or I don't even know, just like major values in life. Even just, I don't know, our values for our family, like we just always see so eye to eye on all of that. I don't know, I do feel like a big part of that is just that those were the things we talked about really early on. And then another part of that is like character and shared values are so much more important than compatibility. With me and my husband, I would say when we met, we had basically nothing in common at all besides our shared values. And then also we loved, we both loved working out, we both loved eating healthy. But other than those two things, and then also just like, being strong in our faith and like serious Christians, we really didn't have much in common at all. Like we didn't really like any of the same music. We didn't like any of the same movies or, hobbies. Just, I don't know, I felt like we were total opposites. And that's another way that I'm like so thankful for the Lord's providence, because I feel like if you're looking for compatibility, then we would not have found each other. But yeah, now 8 years into marriage, I feel like we are so much more compatible. We have so many more common interests because we've just spent so much time together. And now there's tons of music of his that I'm like, oh, I love that. And music of mine that he loves. Now we both enjoy coffee together. Like it all sounds silly when you say it, but a lot of people do base dating off of these like small compatibilities. Like, does he like coffee? He better like coffee. So yeah, I would just encourage you not to focus on compatibility, because realistically, you're gonna change so much over the years. You guys will probably grow more compatible, and the things that you guys have in common when you're like 20, you're probably not even gonna be interested in anymore when you're like 28. What really matters is your shared values and his character. So I was always very impressed with Josh's character. I've always said he's like the most godly man I know. He's like the most wise man I know. Like, I just have so much respect for my husband. And I think that's something that even though like when we were dating, I was like, we have nothing in common, I did just like super respect him. Like, I really just thought he was like the most godly man I had ever met. So I would just encourage you to focus on someone's character and your shared values over compatibility. And okay, one more note, the one that I like thought of when I was talking about our timeline, I was talking about how like we like booked our wedding venue before we were even engaged and started marriage counseling before we were even engaged. Like, we move things so fast. And it's funny because I'm like, I don't know if I would recommend that. Praise the Lord, it worked out for me, but I could also see situations where it's like, man, people could easily marry someone that they don't know at all. So I would just say it worked out for me, but definitely do your due diligence with like searching someone out, making sure you really know who they are before marrying them. Maybe get like references, ask their pastors or whatever. Sometimes I do look back, I'm like, man, that could have been bad, but thankfully it wasn't. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. I post videos every Tuesday and Thursday. I'll see you in the next one.